All right. Welcome back to Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM WECU. And every Tuesday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. for Let's Talk K-12 Education. I'm your host for the next 50 minutes, Tonitia Langley, education enthusiast, thought leader, and founder of Enrichment Strategist Services, LLC, an education consulting business. Connect with me by https backslash Linktree Enrichment Strategist. I'm excited to partner with you, dedicated to the heart of our community education. I'm the host, but you and the community mean the most. I would love for you to share your suggestions of what you would love to get more information related to K-12 education. Please email us at let's talk K-12 education at gmail.com. Again, please send in your suggestions for us thought leaders at let's talk K-12 education at gmail.com. So, as you guys can see, if you joined us last week on this same space and same place, one face looks familiar, but there's another face that we have as a guest today. So, listeners, I have the grand pleasure to introduce this amazing guest that I share this platform with, but we also share the same DNA. And we she is joining us for our back to school series today, but we share the same DNA. We have education strategy sessions together, travel together, and yes, we are blood sisters. So welcome to the show. Her name is Shantae Streeter. And let me tell you a little bit about this Miss Shantae Streeter. She is not just joining Let's Talk K-12 Education because we share the DNA. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Shantae Streeter is a veteran educator, business owner, and doctoral student with experience teaching in the private, public, charter, and virtual school setting. Mrs. Streeter has a BS in social sciences, a master's in education specializing in instructional technology, a master's in the arts of teaching with a certification in middle grades ELA and social studies in multiple, did y'all hear this? Multiple states, and has a gifted and talented endorsement. Having served diverse populations in Title I schools, she aspires to take this knowledge and expand as a professor of education at the higher education level upon completion of her PhD in history and math in 2025. Poetry snaps. Hello. We ready for you to come in on this conversation today, the future Dr. Streeter. Mrs. Streeter has served
Thank you.
in multiple leadership roles and is a member of several esteemed historical professional organizations and is so glad to be here today. So before we get
Thank
into my repeat guests, Ms. Streeter, is there anything you would like to tell our radio listeners today?
Well, I'm definitely glad to be here. So thank you all so much for having me. And I'm very proud of you. This is an awesome platform, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. And we can't wait to get started. And let me reintroduce a familiar face from last week. Thrilled to have an amazing return guest join me to share their perspectives for our continuing series, Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series. I had the wonderful opportunity to be this young lady's mentor teacher for ELA during her beginning teacher phase. She also was a guest on the show last week. Kayla Green, for me to have you back again, you must be something special and serious. What do you have to tell these listeners before we get started with our stuff today? So hang on, let me read to you about Miss Kayla Green. Some of you had it last week, but in case you missed Let's Talk K-12 Education, let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about her. I don't have up here because she's cute and adorable and she was my former mentee. Let me tell you a little bit about Miss Kayla Green. Kayla Green has over 7 years of experience in public education. She has taught middle school English language arts and social studies, high school English, and more recently, she served as an elementary school librarian. those are always some of my favorite people, Kayla. I'm just going to tell you, along with the secretary. Currently, Kayla is an author and brand partner with Pepper Pie. Kayla has written an award winning young adult fantasy novella, Avon, the One Truth, an inspirational poetry collection, Metamorphosis. She has a new young adult novel set to debut in 2025. And I know who she needs to call first because I like to feel special. So, through her writing and with Pepper Pie, Kayla has a goal of spreading literacy love and getting as many books into the hands of as many children as possible. This summer, Kayla organized a book drive to benefit children in foster care. That's sweet right there. Even more recently, she ran a self paced online back to school success workshop sharing tips and resources for families with school age children. You can connect with Kayla through her website, theunicornwriter.com. Miss Kayla, is there anything that you would like to tell our listeners before we get into our show today?
I'm excited to be back and to continue this conversation. I think we're going to have a great talk today.
Awesome. And before we get into our show today, Miss Streeter, I forgot to see if you wanted any way for you have a very busy schedule, but I didn't know if you wanted people to connect with you. If so, just please share your contact information.
Okay, I can definitely be reached at Shantae Streeter at gmail.com for business purposes at Team Infinity Group LLC.com.
Awesome sauce. I got some amazing guests up here today. So, we're going to get right on into our show today. So, being a former middle school teacher and grandmother to 8 school age grandbabies, I recognize the importance of creating and establishing a positive, productive, sturdy foundation at home and bridging the gap for school from home to school connection for a new school year. This always used to make me very nervous. So as a result, I started the Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series, which provides information, tips, tools, and resources in an effort to promote educational equity for families. If you would like a recap of those tools and resources promoting educational equity from previous Let's Talk K-12 Education with Tonitia Langley show, head on over to Facebook. The name would be Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM with the purple and green logo. If you are on YouTube, head on over to YouTube. And the handle is Awesome Radio TV Vision on Film 9300. And again, search for that beautiful purple and green logo. So let's open up the show, True Educational Style, with I have a segment called How is Your Brain Game? Me and Kayla had a little bit of a time last week trying to get through it. She was close. To get your mindset shifts ready for back to school homework and school tasks with your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, godchildren, and all the little people that attend K-12 school. So we're not taking callers today, but I want you and or your K-12 children in your home to enact your critical thinking skills to brainstorm this brain teaser to see if you know the answer. All right, so y'all, I just read your bios, so I want you to put on your critical thinking skills. Now I said all this stuff about you. Let me see how y'all can come through and show these the radio listeners. So here's the question: if you have 5 apples and you take away 3, how many apples do you have? I'll read it again. If you have 5 apples and you take away 3 apples, how many apples do you have? I see
Is
them.
this
I
a
I
see
would
trick
that
say you have
critical
question?
three
thinking.
apples.
I see. Okay, so Shantae says 3 apples. What do you say, Kayla?
Well, if you're taking it away, it sounds like a math problem, but it's a brain teaser.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like I try to overthink these. if it's five, you take
Yep.
away three, that's two. But you also said the word you, you're
Uh-huh.
taking them away. So I can
Right.
see why. I can see why Shantae said three because it's the brain teaser. But to me, two makes sense. So
It does. Yeah.
Can you see our students doing this? We're doing it. So, do y'all
Yes,
give
I do
in?
these with my students. I give
Okay.
in. That's all I
Yes.
got.
So, and it is what we teach our babies, the critical thinking skills. It's right there in the face. You
Mhm.
have five apples because the riddle doesn't say you ate or gave away the apples because you could have had them in a lump and then just move three to the side and still have five apples. So you still have
Mhm.
five apples. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's those so this brain teaser is simple yet can spark a discussion about critical thinking and the importance of reading comprehension in education. So we're going to get into some of these ways in our back to school, back to better, back to basics, back to school series on how we can be active participants in these types of critical thinking skills. It's something to think about, right? And that's how those standardized tests, those EOGs, or Shantae, what do you guys call them from where you guys? Do you call them end of grade tests?
We call them, yes, end of grade milestones. In Georgia is the milestones. Georgia
Got you.
milestones.
Okay. All right. So, radio listeners, if you have brain teasers for How is Your Brain Game segment and you would like to have them on the show, email us at let's talk K12education at gmail.com. So before we get our back to school perspectives from our guest, let's have some hearty conversation that will tie in both audiences for our Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series. So I know that Shantae and Kayla, you guys are going to want to throw something at me and what I'm getting ready to say, but I think that I still think that we need to mention it. So I want to talk about the lingering impact of the pandemic on back to school for this year. I think sometimes that because it just ties into what we're going to talk about today in the back to school series. And people, I don't think that we can say, well, we're over that. No, I think that we still need to talk about it. So I want to talk just briefly about some of the impact on the families, and you guys can hop in, you know, about some families are still having some economic hardships as we think about some of them getting ready to send their kids, their babies back to school, especially if they have multiples. Um, some of the parental involvement barriers that are still lingering because it didn't just go away, it was so mass, you know what I mean? Some of the childcare challenges, and I think when we talk about the mental health concerns, and disclaimer, we're not coming through as mental health professionals because we are not. We are educational practitioners, but we're well versed when it comes to mental health concerns because we deal with a variety of types of our colleagues as well as the families and the students that we serve. Some of the impact on the teachers, burnout and resignation. We're going to touch on some of that today for back to better, back to basics, back to school, skill adaptation, something that I've had to do in my own consultancy. Me and my sister have talked about it. Um, and as a massive of a Jane as I am, even I've had a struggle with skill adaptation. So hopefully, as you guys give some of those tips and tools today in a special segment that we're going to do towards the end, that can be very helpful. Work-life balance, uh, academic recovery for the students, social and emotional challenges for the students, behavioral issues for the students, digital divide. So it's crucial to recognize that the pandemic's impact is not uniform and varies across different communities and student populations. Addressing these challenges requires a multifaceted approach that involves collaboration between schools, families, and communities. So, before we head into our first break in a few minutes, I want to start us off there because I feel as though my heart doesn't let me just say, well, oh, we're over the pandemic and let's move forward. I think that there's been several things done in the education industry, and that is why we're having mass teacher exodus. That is why we're having these political things that are coming up that I won't mention on this show, that is getting some backing because there's some things that we didn't quite take care of to make sure that our teachers and our families and our students were given the proper tools when they just opened up the doors and said, resume teaching. So I want you guys to weigh in as we are thinking about back to better, back to basics, back to school, before we get into some of those specific topics that we're going to cover after the break.
Well, I
Okay.
think, like you said, it's not just over. The impacts are long lasting. Students, they were home, they weren't interacting with other students face to face,
Mm-hmm.
and so you've seen struggles, and you're going to continue to see struggles, especially students. They missed a year and a half, almost 2 years of being around other people. So there's social skills lacking, and so there's time that needs to be addressed to help fill in these gaps, but there's still expectations on teachers and students to hit everything
Mm,
at the current age, the current level, when so much was lost because everyone was at home. And some people do well with that virtual environment, but a lot of
mm-hmm.
people, a lot of children, a lot of people, they just they miss stuff when they don't have that small group. They don't have that one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
intervention.
So thank you, Kayla. I'm going to pull Shantae in for just a second because um, Shantae actually does virtual education. And so I want you, we got a few minutes before we head to break. What does that look like? Are you seeing in your area facilitating education that is kind of out of the norm of what we're used to? What does it look like? What does it look like for back to school when that's what you primarily do? So I want you to kind of chime in with that, Shantae, if you don't mind, before we go to break.
Okay. Yes, definitely. Thank you. So there is definitely a lasting impact. And what we're seeing when we're doing the beginning of the year diagnostics and what we've seen year after year since the COVID supposedly ended is this current deficit in vocabulary, comprehension,
Mm,
and reading skills. And it's translating
mhm,
over into their writing. And so
mm,
students are now more than ever needing all sorts of supports, additional resources, and additional tutoring, and programs designed to give them more practice. And so we're
mhm,
assessing them mid-year and then again at end of year. And so research says that it takes about 3 years to close up a 1 year gap. And so
oh,
those gaps are generally big. And so what we're seeing in let's say eighth grade last year, we would see many students on between the third and the sixth grade reading level. And so
wow.
now there's a push for vocabulary. So teaching vocabulary during warm up, doing things such as the Freyer model, where you're having a synonym, the antonym, and then writing a sentence with, having them identify sentence parts, and then participating in reading current day to day, back to back reading to
Mhm.
teach the content is a great support for rectifying those reading deficits. But that is where we're seeing the lasting impact is in the reading. And again, it's translating into the writing.
Wow. So what are you guys before we head on in, we're gonna pick up with we're gonna start with you, Shantae, about what you all are recommending to parents and communities at home. But we're gonna go ahead and get ready to get into our first break. It has been amazing with these two educational thought leaders as we provide you with some reminders of what we need to do to have success. what we need to do to go to be back to better, back to basics, and back to school on here on Let's Talk Radio, on Let's Talk K-12 Radio, Awesome Radio. Getting ready to head to our very first break. We cannot wait to get started on the second part of who we need to address for back to school. Can't wait to get started. We'll see you soon. All right. Welcome back from our short break to Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM WECU every Tuesday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. for Let's Talk K-12 education. And we have been, again, I have myself, Tonitia Langley. I have my guests, Shantae Streeter and Kayla Green with me. And we're gonna continue on with the flow with the Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series that we started. And we're going to turn it over to the hands of Kayla during this time. So Kayla, go ahead and take it away for our radio listeners.
All right, thanks, Tanisha. So, if you did tune
Mhm.
in last week, you know that we were talking a lot about resources for at home that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles could bring in to help support their children's learning. We talked about learning games that are super easy, like the headband game, trash get ball. Those are super easy. And just because of time here, if you've got questions about those, you can go back to see last week and listen to last week's show. But I did want to share, in case you did miss last week, and you're tuning in with us today, I wanted to share some really, really good resources that families can utilize. One is the Libby app. So Libby, Libby app. If you have a library card, and it's a free app, you just have to have a library card. So go to the library, get a library card. But with the app from your device, you can access books, so electronic books, and then also audiobooks. And you check it out just like you would at a physical book at the library. And these can be really beneficial, especially the audiobooks. For your children to listen to them. And one great strategy is to have the audiobook, or like you read out loud, not the audiobook, but the ebook, the electronic book, and you read it out loud
Mhm.
along with your child, because they'll be able that out loud. Um, it helps them develop fluency, understand pronunciation, and associate words, and help build that vocabulary. Like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of
Mhm.
lacking in vocabulary and comprehension.
Mhm.
Um, and there's not an age limit to reading aloud. If there was, the audiobook industry would not be booming like it is today.
Very true.
Um, Another online resource that has virtual read alouds and lots of passages and it's interactive is Storyline Online. If you just search that in, it'll pop up. There's also two resources we did not get a chance to dive into last week, and that includes the International Children's Digital Library. Um, it's
Mm.
It's also got different resources. It's a little bit more, whereas international is a little bit more extensive, because the Libby app is tied to your library's collection in house.
Mhm.
And if you've got a smaller library in your area, you may not have as many selections. It's still good still to have what that library has to offer, but the International Children's Digital Library does have a more extensive, a larger collection. And then also, one way to help build, encourage your children to be readers and to be excited about reading is to have books just available. And one way to
Yes.
get books into your house, physical books, you can always go to the library and check out books. But families can also sign up for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. It's completely free.
Mm-hmm.
You go in
Mm-hmm.
online, you put in your area, your child's age, and it'll let you know if there are, availability in your area. It's been a couple weeks since I checked, but at least the Pitt County area, there were some signups a couple weeks ago. So you sign up and you get books sent to your house for your child based on their age, and it's birth.
Nice.
There's a it's birth through I think age 6 or 7, but don't quote me on the end age. But still, it's getting books into the home early, and you don't have to sign up just when your child is first born. If they're a little older, you can still sign in to that program.
Kayla, where does your recommendation for our listening community to start to implement some of these resources that in our back to school series? What is your suggestion for our listening
Well, my
audience?
yeah, because I did just share a whole bunch. So it's like, where do I start? I
Mm-hmm.
think the first thing, the very basic is what works for my family to get reading time in. So first decide, when are we reading together? Is that going to be at bedtime? Is that going to be listening to an audiobook and discussing it while preparing dinner? Is that going to be driving in the car on the way to school or on a trip? Go ahead and pick a time where everyone is, and it's excited. Oh, we're going to read together. We get to talk about this. If,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you have your work on the routine. Work on the routine first, and then decide, okay, it would be really nice for us for bedtime. That's going to be our routine, to have physical books. So that's the resource. I want to do the Imagination Library to get those physical books. But if you have the routine
Gotcha.
and it's, oh, audiobooks work really well for our family reading time, then check
Mm-hmm.
out the Libby app or Storyline online. So my recommendation is to establish the reading routine, and then figure out what type of books you and your family want to focus on for your reading time.
Beautiful. Shantae, you've raised two children. Well, I don't even know what you correctly call them when you get them from children to teens to young adults. What
I
were
call
some of
them
the things
grown.
you call them? What you
My
call them?
grown. That's my mixture of grown children, grown.
I like me and my other friend Susie's been trying to say, well, what is the correct thing to call them? So I like grown. Um, so having raised children and now having grown men, and I'm going to have to adopt that word, Shantae, and teaching, teaching and still teaching in the facility in executing instruction. What are some things that you have provided when these families are just coming back to school? It's brand new, based upon some of the recommendations that Kayla suggested. What are some things that you've either done personally with your when you're grown when now, but when they were children, or what you are advising your families that you serve to do with back to school and reading and all those good things?
Well, when it comes to reading, I definitely agree with what Kayla was saying. Just get them started reading. Sometime is better
Mm-hmm.
than no time. So even if it's
Yes.
in transit, on the way to karate practice or dance practice, get them reading. I always signed my children up for the summer reading program. So they would do that. They would get their little
Mm-hmm.
pizza awards and so forth. And that meant the world to them. So they did that faithfully until they had outgrown it. So that's how I established a
Mm-hmm.
pattern of reading as a habit. And then we did nighttime stories as
Mm-hmm.
well. But one of the things that I would suggest in addition to that is, in the online community, there is a way to access the library, and there's an app called Sora, Sora. And you can check out books
Mm-hmm.
through Sora. And so that is also something. So even if you're virtual, check and see what your school has available. And it may just be Sora. bookstore, and you can check out an array of books on different lexile levels. And again, just get them started reading various genres. Another thing I would suggest is organization, having a spot that is designated, comfortable,
Mhm.
fitted for them, whether it be a bean bag, a closet corner, something with low lighting, however they
Mhm.
like their atmosphere to be, and make it fun for them. It can involve apple slices or whatever it is, but just
Mhm.
make it enjoyable, and they will remember
Mhm.
that. And that's a really good way to establish a regular routine of reading, and it doesn't seem like a punishment to them in that way.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point too, Shantae, that having that routine, having that consistency with children. So we're getting ready to head on over to another station break. But I want to say these are some great tips. These are some tools that parents and the communities in our radio listening audience can access from a phone. There's different levels. So you guys have provided some great information. Want you guys to come right back to us at Let's Talk K-12 Radio for the last 20 minutes of our show, where we're going to get into another specific one. So stay tuned for Let's Talk K-12 Radio, where you're going to get some back to school, back to basics, and back to better in just a few minutes. Thank you so very much. Welcome back again to another segment of Awesome Radio 107.5 FM and 1570 AM WECU as we gear up again for a new school year. And we've been diving pretty deep in our Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series, where we have just showed a lot of love and support and tips and tools and resources and expertise and thought leaders, and educational enthusiasts coming to the table for free, providing our families of these communities with resources. And again, if you've missed any of the show and you are starting a brand new year with your children, one of the things before we dive into this very important next segment is this is a new year, new NEW. And we're going to think about it along those terms. And so that's why we've taken the time to do it. But without further ado, got to take a deep breath on this one. Going to talk about some people that are near and dear to all of our hearts as thought leaders, educational thought leaders. And even though I can speak very freely, I had a awesome beginning teacher probationary period, but it hasn't been that way for a lot of people. And we're bringing up beginning teachers because unfortunately, because of the things that are happening in education due to the pandemic, some things controlled, some things out of people's controls. Unfortunately, many schools will have many beginning teachers. And also, as a challenge, some of those beginning teachers have not been formally trained like us that are up here. So, gonna take this time. We've shown our families and our babies in the community and whoever takes care of them a lot of resources and a lot of love. At this point in time, we're going to put our focus on beginning teachers going back to better or starting better, starting the basics, and starting a brand new school year. And I'm gonna turn it over to Kayla because I'm gonna let her, come from those perspectives, show some love to our beginning teachers, whether they're in teacher preps or coming from formal education the way some of us have. So, Kayla, I'm gonna turn it over to you. What do you have to give our radio listening audience for beginning teachers that may be listening or family members of those beginning teachers? Talk to our radio listening audience and give them some information that won't seem so scary to a beginning teacher.
Yeah, first of all, beginning teachers, you rock. You're coming into the classroom and you're here for students, and we applaud you. And
Mhm.
there are so many things we could focus on with beginning teaching. But first, I want to just kind of talk about some, general tips, general help, to help you through this first year, these first few months.
Yes.
And the first thing is, have a mentor and use their expertise. Some
Mhm.
districts do set up a beginning, they have the beginning teacher program. But don't be scared to talk to your mentor. They're there. Go
Repeat
see
it.
them.
Repeat it. Repeat it, Kayla. Repeat it.
Don't
Repeat it.
be scared of your mentor. They are there for you. Go to them. Even if you're like, oh, this is a silly question, go ask it. If you're,
Mhm.
if you're, whether it's prep, um, uh, building relationships with students, building relationships with families, whatever it is. Tanisha, I was in your room all the time. I remember
Ye-
when you were my
Yes.
mentor,
Yes.
and sometimes
Mhm.
it was just to sit down in the desk and to catch my breath. And
Yes.
it's okay, beginning teachers. It's okay that you have days you feel, how am I going to catch my
Yeah.
breath? Um,
Exactly. And Kayla and or Shantae. So you had a I had a great experience, beginning teacher experience. You had a pretty good one, I would like to say.
yes.
So Kayla, you may address this. I don't know if you have this in your talk today. What do you suggest to those beginning teachers who aren't having those very good experiences and can't catch their breath, or may not have the best relationship with their mentor teacher? What do you suggest? And I also want Shantae to come in and add to that discussion.
That is a excellent question. My recommendation is find your person. You're going to have a teacher friend there.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be your official assigned mentor. It could be, if you're middle school on the block system, it could be your block partner. It could be somebody in another grade. Um, Talk to your coworkers, figure out who your teacher buddy is, and get support. That whole building, there is somebody that you are going to connect with, that you're going to have that good relationship with. Um, like my first year, Tanisha, I think you would have been willing to help, but we were kind of far apart. But my across the hall
Hmm.
neighbor, when we
Hmm.
got, there was a couple hours after lunch, and me and my kids needed a bathroom break, but I couldn't go to the bathroom while they went to the bathroom. So me and her, we set
Yes.
up a thing where we would go together so I could get my potty
Hmm.
break and the kids
Right.
wouldn't all
Exactly.
be doing the bathroom train. So
Hmm.
talk to people. There are solutions to little things. You
Hmm.
just have to find your village. Your village is in that building.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Shantae, being an experienced career status teacher as well, and I think you did some mentoring as well, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. What
I did.
tips do you also add to what Kayla's saying as she goes through her other points?
So I would give some practical tips, such as if you're overwhelmed with emails, there are two things I would definitely recommend. One is sending an update every week at the start of the week, and it tells what's coming, it tells where we are, it tells upcoming assignments and reminders, such as, say, for example, in an online environment, right now, cameras are required for my district. So your camera, cameras on, is it sleep to? So you're reminding them, you're prepping them. Any extra credit assignments. Parents like hearing updates. And when they can count on you to consistently send them a newsletter, it decreases your emails significantly because they know that they're going to hear from you. It also decreases the amount of questions that your students ask when you say in class, I sent you all an email today. Remember, every Monday I send an update. Read your emails. And the second practical tip I would suggest is at the end of every class, even if it's only for the last 2 minutes, this is applicable even if you're online or in a brick and mortar building. Leave it open for questions about anything specific to your content. That includes clarifying misconceptions about assignments. Did you get my work? Whatever it is that will alleviate the stress of the student and can alleviate the stress for you and an email later from the parent. Leave
Oh,
2 minutes questions. That has tremendously dropped my email load. Okay, so those two
yes.
things, send email updates every week and leave two
Mm-hmm.
minutes open if you can at the end of every class period for questions.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Go ahead on Kayla.
Yeah, I just want to, Shantae, that was an excellent thing to go ahead and have that information like preloaded at the beginning of the week. That is awesome. And, you can do emails, but also according to your district policies, there's Class Dojo,
Mm-hmm.
Remind, where you can keep parents
Mhm.
in the loop. And that's going to help build relationships. Your parents are connected with you, and relationships are so important. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about, with the emails and keeping communication clear,
Mhm.
you want to, I highly, highly suggest in the first 10 days of school, try to reach out to the parent and say, I'm so glad your child is in my class. Whether it's the first couple of days, find something. There's something about that child that is, there's a reason they're in your class. Was it you
Yeah.
can see that they are easily excited about math? Or can you tell that they're
Mm-hmm.
a good friend? Did they pick their neighbor's pencil up when it fell and that they're very
Mm-hmm.
kind? You want to go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and have that initial contact that's positive.
Yes.
And if something does happen where you have to make a not so positive phone call because of some choices, poor choices being made, I also highly recommend to keep an eye on that student for improvement, for progress, and let the
Mm-hmm.
parent know, hey, they did this and I'm so proud of them. Because
Mm-hmm.
so many parents feel like that school number pops up and they're like, oh no, what now? And when I was in middle school, I had I had one girl my first year teaching who came in the next day and she said, I've never gotten a positive call. She was
Oh,
in seventh grade and she said, I didn't know the teachers could call because I did something good.
good for you,
And
Kayla.
so say that again.
I said, good for you.
Yeah, it was kind of heartbreaking to be in middle
Mm-hmm.
school and have never gotten positive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So, beginning teachers, there's a lot on your plate, but you need to make relationships a priority. That is my advice. You need to make
And
relationships a priority.
I'm sorry. How important is that, Kayla? Why is it such a big deal to establish those relationships as soon as you kind of get up and running back to school for these beginning teachers? Especially those students who you're saying, let me check them out and send something positive very early on. Why is that so impactful?
It's so impactful because it shows that you care. You're in that classroom because you care. And these little acts, it's not just, don't look at it as, oh, that's something else on my to-do list. It is you showing that you care, and it's building a mutual respect and a relationship. And children don't care what you know until they
Mhm.
know that you care.
That's very true.
And it's also going to make your learning environment more fun if you and your children are happy to be in that room or that virtual environment together. And so, and that's something that is also on my list that I wanted to talk about is you have to figure out how to make it fun, not
Mm.
just for the students, but
Mhm.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that mean doing a choice board activity where students have a, some say if um, instead of that they're able to do like some sort of performance or something versus doing something sitting down in their desk? And it varies depending on grade or subject. But yeah, what are some ways that you guys have built relationships and have tried to have fun in your classrooms with your students?
You want me to
So
go?
one of the
Okay,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Shantae. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things that I do is I like to include my students in my choices for decorating my classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
includes the color scheme, the lighting, the seating. So
Mm-hmm.
blues and greens work. It reduces stress and anxiety. And I bring in like panels and let them pick and we go over those colors. If money is of issue for the new teacher, because often that's how it is when you're a beginning teacher, then you can
Yes.
look at things such as panels out of the dollar store. There are borders, and you can start with something as basic as border trims that'll help calm the color down in the classroom. You can do
Mm.
lighting across the board, just a strip of that Christmas lighting, but all the white candles, and help dim the
Mm-hmm.
lighting with some low
Yes.
candles around the low lighting lamps around the room. You can get those from Goodwill or through donations. Oftentimes, veteran teachers, when they're leaving the profession, they'll give away things. Go to their classrooms and see what you might find. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always something good for beginning teachers. That's how I got my start, was veteran teachers either moving up and no longer in middle grades, or they were leaving the profession and giving us things. Another thing is just making it an environment that when they come in the room, everything else outside didn't matter. So for me,
Yes.
that meant being flexible. And when you speak
Mm-hmm.
about being happy, children learn best when they're happy. So
I
I didn't
agree.
make it a big deal if they don't have a pencil. I had a
Yeah.
system in place where I'd go to the dollar store and buy 5 packs of pencils for $5. There's 60 pencils, they last all year. And I put 3 on the board at a time with my name on it, and they could easily go sign one out and sign it back in. If another kid found it in another class, they return it. I give them a piece of
Mm-hmm.
candy as an incentive. Those 3 pencils
Mm-hmm.
would last for almost 9 weeks. So we don't talk
Very
about what
cool.
I do if I don't have a pencil. And going to the trash can or eating in the class was okay, because the only thing I didn't want them to eat was coffee and caffeine drinks, but like energy drinks. But eating wasn't even a deal. Eating wasn't even a
Right.
deal. I let them eat because I wanted them happy. So if you can't make it to
Right.
lunch and you need a snack and clean up behind yourself, because let's get to learning and having a good time. So I definitely
What is
agree
that?
with what Kayla was saying, making it work for everyone to be happy
Right.
in the class.
That's Maslow's, right? Hierarchical needs.
Yeah,
So I want
self, yeah.
Yep. I wanna double
I'm
back
sorry.
for just a second before we close out our show today on the Back to Better, Back to Basics, Back to School series supporting communities and beginning teachers. So I want to kind of circle back. If when I was a beginning teacher and I was a non-traditional, so I'd already, had children, was, married and a caregiver and starting. So beginning teachers, I want you guys to understand you will have a lot that you'll have to do. And I was very fortunate where I had several people that wanted to come and support me. And this is going to sound very minute, it's going to sound very simple, but I want to say this to you so you'll understand. When I had people coming to offer to help me, I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know how to tell them to support me. It's okay if people are reaching out and you don't know to say, well, can you do my emergency plans? You don't know. So just tell them, thank you so much for offering to help me, start my new year. Let me digest what I need through my list and I'll get back with you. That's number 1. So don't feel bad if you're fortunate like I was, where people were coming to try to support me as a beginning teacher and I just was so overwhelmed I didn't know what to tell them to support me. That's number one. My other practical tip, and I want to circle back to Shantae. Shantae, what is the reason that is helpful for beginning teachers to keep their room dim sometimes and not have it all light all the time? What was your reasoning for doing that as a beginning teacher, and how is that beneficial and helpful for you as a teacher?
Children deal with so much outside of the classroom, and unlike us where we're trained professionals to leave our personal outside, they are not. So especially in middle grades where they're learning how to regulate themselves and they still won't learn that in middle grades, it's important to
Yes.
be able to establish something that they can come in and feel comfortable. So even with flexible seating, I would have a seat that's designated. I don't want to be bothered today. I don't even want to be in a group. I'm going to participate and do everything you tell me to do, but I just really am having a bad day. So we even had that seat. So I just think
Beautiful.
it's important that we consider that they really have some issues sometimes they that are on their mind when they come to class and that they can't separate from. So it's just important to consider that not only for classroom management, but also because the students need us for that. They need us to be ahead of the game and be proactive for them.
So, do you think, in your opinion, you and Kayla, that when you have the lights wide open all the time, that it can be kind of overstimulating? And I heard you say the word self-regulate. Is that one of the reasons that
Yes.
you did it, Shantae? Kayla, you did that
Yes.
as well sometimes, didn't you?
Yeah, I would. Well, I wouldn't turn on both lights because it was just so
Mhm.
bright. And I also talking
Mm-hmm.
about not being overstimulated. You know, you see like the Pinterest classrooms, and it's like, oh, I want to do all this stuff,
Yes.
but you also don't
Mm-hmm.
want to have so much overwhelm that
Mm-hmm.
nothing is taken in, like your key anchor charts or
Mhm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You just be mindful of everything that you're adding um, to your space.
Okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
guys, we are getting ready to close it on out. It has been fun having Shantae Streeter here on Let's Talk K12 Radio, having Kayla Green come back as a return um, thought leader today as we continue our back to school, back to better, back to basics, back to school for our listening audience and for our beginning teachers. Find us on Facebook and YouTube. Remember, if you have any ideas for topics, hit us up at Let's Talk K-12 Education at gmail.com. And I'm your host, but you as the community are the most. It has been amazing to have you here listening to Let's Talk K-12 Radio. And we look forward to seeing you here back again next Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Thank you so very much.